All right, we are now live on YouTube, and we'll call this special meeting of the Reading Board of Education for Friday, August 13th at 5 p.m. to order at 5:01 p.m., being held remotely pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act as amended. The first item of business is discussion and possible action, change in authorized signer. I'm sorry, before I get to that, all members are present. For the administration, Dr. McMorrin. The first item of business is change and authorized signer of the ED 099 agreement for the child nutrition program. And what I'm going to do is share my screen. This is a technical compliance issue so that our interim superintendent has the authority to sign on behalf of the food certification program. Looking for a motion that the Reading Board of Education approve to change the authorized signer of the ED 099 agreement for child nutrition program to Dr. Thomas McMorrin, interim superintendent, effective immediately. Do I have that motion? Mike, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Heather, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll take the roll. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Steph? Steph? Go to Chris Hocker.
Yes.
I vote yes. Give Steph one more chance. I'm going to consider the motion carried 6-0 with one non-voting. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the formation of a personnel search committee for the RES principal. As I think all members of the board are aware, with the resignation. Oh, I see Steph waving at the screen, who cannot be heard. Right. So with the vacancy with respect to the RES principal, pursuant to our recent practice, we'll be looking to create a personnel search committee of the whole for the purpose of filling the vacancy and allowing the committee to meet in non-meeting and take other appropriate action pursuant to the FOI Act. So I look for a motion that is consistent with what we did for John Reed. The draft language includes specifically incorporating the superintendent in that committee. The draft motion on the screen is that the Board of Education establish an RES principal personnel search committee for the purpose of identifying and recommending a candidate for principal of Reading Elementary School. The committee shall be comprised of the full membership of the board plus the superintendent and shall be empowered to design and implement an appropriate hiring process.
Make the motion, Chris.
Thank you, Mike. Second from John. Is there any discussion on the motion or any proposed amendments? Chris?
Just a clarifier, I'm assuming in this case that the superintendent applies to the position as opposed to the person.
I'm sorry?
That placing the superintendent on the committee. Okay.
Yep.
All right. In this case, the superintendent refers to the individual who is holding the position of superintendent.
Right. It's a reference to the office, not the holder of the office.
And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. That's all.
Yeah. And I think that similarly, to the extent that the committee's work continued past the election cycle, the application would be for board members then seated. But we could make those formal appointments and reappointments as necessary. But for this purposes of this motion, if it's carried, the 7 sitting board members plus Dr. McMorrin would be seated on the personnel search committee for the time being.
Right.
Any further discussions or suggested revisions? If there aren't any, we will call the question. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Steph? She's giving me a thumbs up. That's yes. Chris Hocker?
Yes.
I vote yes, and the motion carries 7-0, which brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is appointment of the RES interim principal. And I want to introduce Dr. McMorrin to give the board a little bit of background on where we are in this process.
Yes, good late afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to see some of you again. I have I will first want to recognize and thank Natalie Hammond for the time that she served us as principal at Reading Elementary School. When she gave me notice that perhaps she would be resigning, I had contacted the Connecticut Association of Schools, who maintain a list of potential interim administrators. I went through the list with our HR manager, Vicki Cram, and we reached out to the person I'm going to introduce you to now. She's not on the call tonight, and where we are is we have a verbal agreement, and we are finalizing the terms of her contract pending this meeting. The person I want to introduce you to, at least in the terms of her resume, is Sharon Weirsman. She's a retired elementary school principal. She served for many years in the Cheshire School District. She's also a certified executive coach, and she has taught at St. Joseph's College in Hartford, in West Hartford. She was the principal at the Doolittle School in Cheshire, and upon retirement has served in a number of interim positions, including in Brantford, in Westbrook, in the town of Orange. And we met with her, the HR manager, Vicki Cram, and I, first by phone, and then we met with her here at central office and had a great conversation. And I think that with her experience and with her experience as an interim, that she'll be able to help us affect the opening of school and lead us into the first half of the year. So where we are is finalizing the details of the contract. We have to do our due diligence with references, but I'm pretty confident they'll be very positive. And we hope to have some overlap time between Ms. Weirsman and Natalie Hammond as early as the middle of next week. And that's my report to you.
So it would be your recommendation that the board accept your recommendation that Ms. Weirsman be appointed as the interim principal?
Yes, that is my recommendation. Thank you.
And so consistent with that recommendation, would look for a motion to accept that recommendation to appoint Sharon Weirsman as the interim principal of Reading Elementary School and authorize the superintendent to enter into an appropriate agreement subject to the conditions imposed upon Ms. Weirsman by the Teachers Retirement Board, which gives effect to what Dr. McMorran said about her retirement. She's subject to limitations under the TRB pension program to how much she can earn and for how long. So that's what that is in reference to. Is there anybody interested in making this or a similar motion?
Sure.
Chris, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll
Steph.
second. Oh,
Okay. So Hocker and Alton, any discussion?
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
Chris, Tom's the guy who brought us Dr. Amori, so I'm pretty confident in his, ability to help us find an interim. I'm just wondering why we're voting on it as opposed to just giving him the latitude. Well, it's to give him the latitude to do it, but it's odd when we've identified the candidate per se.
Right. I think this is effectively a belt and suspenders public showing of support for Dr. McMorran's judgment in this case. I would agree with you philosophically that there's an inherent authority here, but in light of a number of things, not the least of which is the interim nature of Dr. McMorran's appointment, that it's important that we all make sure that we're on the same page and be clear about the authority that's being vested in him to take this action.
Okay.
Mike?
I wonder
Then Chris.
if we could have Tom just walk us through, Natalie needed to give us, I believe, 90 days notice, right?
No, actually her contract did not have terms of severance notification. So that would put us back on generally a 2 weeks notice.
Okay.
It falls more on custom. I've found that when someone wants to move on, if you can facilitate that and get somebody in that particularly in light of, we want to give a little runway to Ms. Weirsman so she can get up to speed on us. And even though she's experienced, we're going to want to give her time to meet with staff and know our protocols and whatnot.
All right, well, that makes more sense. The follow-up was going to be, why do we want to appoint an interim while we're looking if we have 90 days, but if we don't have 90 days, this makes it.
Yep.
Okay.
It is something to consider in the formation of a contract with your permanent replacement when you get to that person.
Chris?
Sure it is.
Yeah, and this question is mainly for clarity to the public. Does Ms. Weirsman have any expectation as to the length of her tenure?
We have, it's constrained by the Teachers Retirement Bureau, which says that a retired person can earn up to 45% of a position based on the salary of that position. So we're looking in the neighborhood of 110 days. And my operational recommendation would be to have her here 5 full days a week, saving holidays, public holidays. And then if you get to a point where you can say, you can secure your new principal, but they don't want to come to the middle of the year, something like that, you could then go to 4 days a week or something to keep that number that without exceeding the total number that TRB allows, but still have presence, in the system. But
Right, but conversely, I guess my question goes to if we would be fortunate enough to find somebody who could
yeah, it works in the other way.
October 15th,
Right.
I'm assuming you would probably want some sort of overlap period, but is Ms. Weirsman aware that there's kind of a range of possibilities and that she's okay with that?
Right.
That
So
need
another,
to be
yeah,
flexible.
good. Thank you for bringing that up, Chris. So we're not making a commitment of a set number of days or a full salary. It could be you find someone in September who can come in October 1st, then you would then bring her interim status, to closure and put the new person in.
Right.
I
Okay.
think that the next step is going to have get the search committee together and figure out how we want to plot out the permanent question and get a sense as to whether or not that's something that's going to happen with relative speed or whether it's going to be a circumstance where we're talking about a January or a July kind of conversation. So.
Right. I mean, the timing is such that you pretty much have no choice but to put someone in place, and this someone appears to have done this before and sort of gets what being an interim means. But in terms of any sort of finality or definitiveness, this simply gets us into the school year, and hopefully this board can move forward with the permanent.
Right. Correct.
It's a bridge for the immediate term.
The bridge, yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board or further discussion?
I want to clarify, Vicky just told me, we're both in the office here, that a tenured person generally you can hold for 30 days. But again, I think it is to our advantage to have the interim in here now and have a couple of weeks to meet with faculty and staff and get up to speed, as opposed to starting after the school year has begun. I said 2 weeks, it's actually 30 days.
Any further discussion? If there is not, can call the question. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Steph? Thumbs up. Chris?
Yes.
Tucker?
Yes.
I vote yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Thank you. That concludes item 2C on the agenda, which brings us to item 3 on the agenda, public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment, please indicate so by raising your hand using the reactions button in Zoom, or otherwise turn your video on and wave. Seeing none, can move on to board member comment. Members of the board wishing to comment. John?
Yeah, I'm glad she's on this Zoom because I really want to recognize Vicky Cram for working overboard all the time, but particularly with the circumstances that we're in right now, trying to fill so many slots. We always know that Vicky's working hard for us, but probably never more so than she is right now. And she's just a great person and a great part of our team. And I don't really know where we'd be without her. So thanks, Vicky.
Thank you, John. Any other board member comment? All right, if there isn't, I would simply comment first to extend appreciation on behalf of the board to Natalie Hammond for her service to the RES community over the past 4 years. I think everybody is sorry to see her go, but very appreciative of the time that she spent with us. And I also thank the work of Vicky and Tom in helping find us an interim on extremely short notice, and to the flexibility of my colleagues for spending a early Friday evening in the summer having this conversation. And so with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Mike, second.
Second.
John, absent objection, we are adjourned at 5:17 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Happy weekend, everybody.